Imagine a quiet neighborhood in Pella, Iowa, disrupted by the shocking discovery of a life abruptly ended. In the spring of 2020, a chilling scene unfolded in this peaceful Midwestern town. A mother of 4, Tracy Mondabough, was found lifeless in her vehicle. The 47-year-old woman was still belted into her driver's seat, the gruesome evidence of her violent end, a stark contrast to the suburban tranquility surrounding her. The vehicle was parked just outside her home, an ordinary house on an ordinary street, now the backdrop for an extraordinary crime. The simple act of getting into her car had become the last routine act of Tracy's life, and the beginning of a mystery that would shake the community. The first responders arrived swiftly, their flashing lights piercing the calm dusk. The initial confusion was palpable. Neighbors watched from behind their curtains, their homes now part of a crime scene, their quiet evening shattered by the grim reality of murder. As the law enforcement officers surveyed the scene, their professional calm belied the shock they felt. Such violence was rare in their small town. The brutality of the crime was a harsh reminder that evil could find its way even to places like Pella. The investigators moved quickly, their minds racing to make sense of the chaos. They catalogued every detail, every piece of potential evidence. The car, the surroundings, the position of Tracy's body, everything could hold the key to unraveling the mystery of her tragic end. And then, the whispers started. Witnesses reported hearing a woman's voice, high and shrill with rage, echoing through the quiet streets just moments before the law enforcement arrived. The words she screamed were chilling. "He's mine! You can't have him! He's mine!" The crime scene painted a vivid picture of a life abruptly ended, a woman taken in her prime. The brutality of the act, the anger in the voice that witnesses reported, all pointed to one chilling conclusion. As investigators began to piece together the puzzle, they knew they were dealing with a crime of passion. As law enforcement dove into the investigation, a narrative began to emerge. The first steps in any investigation are crucial. In this case, the initial stages were a whirlwind of activity. The victim was identified as Tracy Mondabough, a mother of 4, whose life was brutally snuffed out in the spring of 2020. The scene, a quiet neighborhood street where Tracy's car was parked, became a hive of activity as investigators scoured for clues. The condition of the body, the location, and the murder weapon all pointed towards a sudden and violent crime. The fact that Tracy was still in her vehicle, seatbelt fastened, suggested a swift and surprise attack. But who would want to harm this mother of 4 in such a brutal manner? The answer to that question became more evident when investigators started interviewing witnesses. One particular account stood out from the rest. A woman, in the heat of the moment, was overheard screaming, "He's mine! You can't have him! He's mine!" These chilling words painted a picture of jealousy and obsession, taking the investigation down a dark and twisted path. Was this a crime of passion? Did Tracy know her attacker? And who was this mysterious woman, laying claim to someone else's affections? These were the questions that plagued investigators as they delved deeper into the case. As they sifted through the evidence, they began to construct a timeline. The killer had not lingered at the scene. In fact, they had fled just moments before law enforcement arrived, leaving Tracy alone in her car, the life ebbing away from her. But as the investigators examined the scene, they found something that could potentially break the case wide open. A single strand of hair, a piece of jewelry, a distinctive footprint. Every piece of evidence was meticulously catalogued and analyzed. The pieces were coming together, building a chilling picture of jealousy and rage. The hunt for Tracy Mondabough's killer was on, and the investigators were determined to bring them to justice. But the journey towards the truth was only just beginning. Investigators zeroed in on a prime suspect, a woman whose desperation had driven her to the unthinkable. Meet Michelle Boat, the ex-wife of the man Tracy Mondabough had recently started dating. A cloud of animosity hung around Michelle, her resentment palpable. Witnesses recalled hearing her heated declarations, "He's mine! You can't have him! He's mine!" Michelle's erratic behavior didn't stop at mere words. She had been spotted lurking around Tracy's home, her eyes filled with a dangerous mix of jealousy and rage. Her car was identified near the crime scene, a detail that didn't escape the keen eyes of the investigators. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood painted a chilling picture. Michelle Boat was seen on the day of the murder, just minutes before the incident, in the same vicinity. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. Investigators discovered a knife in Michelle's possession that matched the description of the murder weapon. Forensic tests confirmed the pressed die. As the trial began, the courtroom was abuzz with anticipation. The air was thick with the gravity of the situation as the prosecution and defense prepared to present their cases. The prosecution unveiled a sea of evidence to the jury, meticulously laying out a timeline that pointed to the accused, Michelle Boat, as the perpetrator of the gruesome crime. They revealed surveillance footage showing the defendant lurking near the victim's home on the day of the murder. Friends and neighbors were called to the stand, testifying to the heated confrontation they had witnessed between Boat and the victim, Tracy Mondabough. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and rage, who would stop at nothing to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. The defense, on the other hand, counter-argued with fervor. They pointed to the lack of physical evidence directly linking Boat to the crime scene and the fact that no murder weapon had been recovered. They contended that the prosecution's case was purely circumstantial, lacking the concrete proof needed to convict their client. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll it took on the victim's family was palpable. Tracy's children sat in the front row, their faces a mask of grief and disbelief as they listened to the unfathomable details of their mother's final moments. Their heart-wrenching sobs echoed through the courtroom, a stark reminder of the human loss at the heart of this trial. Throughout the proceedings, Michelle Boat remained stoic, her face betraying no emotion. Yet her eyes told a different story. A story of a woman wrestling with her own demons, trapped in a web of her own making. Finally, after days of intense deliberation, the trial reached its climax. The prosecution and defense had made their cases, and all that was left was for the jury to decide. The courtroom held its collective breath as the jury filed out, each member carrying the heavy burden of determining a woman's fate. The jury, faced with a harrowing decision, retreated to deliberate. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict that would forever mark the lives of those involved. The courtroom held its breath as the foreman rose and delivered the jury's decision. Guilty. The word hung heavy in the air, a weighty confirmation of what many had suspected. Michelle Boat, the woman whose jealousy had driven her to commit an unimaginable act, was found guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence was swift and decisive. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. As the news of Boat's sentencing spread, a ripple of relief and sorrow swept through the community. For the family and friends of Tracy Mondabough, the verdict provided a semblance of closure, a bittersweet end to a painful chapter. The pain of their loss was not eased, but the justice served provided a small comfort in their ongoing grief. Public sentiment echoed this mix of relief and sadness. The community of Pella, known for its Dutch heritage and peaceful way of life, had been shaken to its core by this crime. The streets that once felt safe were now a reminder of a life taken too soon. Conversations in coffee shops and grocery stores turned to the trial and its outcome, a shared processing of the shock and disbelief. Local media covered the story extensively, highlighting the impact the case had on the small town. The headlines painted a picture of a community grappling with a tragedy, of a sense of security shattered and slowly being rebuilt. In the aftermath, Michelle Boat began serving her sentence, her days marked by the monotony of prison life. The vibrant woman she once was, now just a faded memory replaced by the image of a convicted murderer. In the end, justice was served, but the memory of Tracy Mondabough and the tragedy of her untimely death continued to echo through the quiet streets of Pella, Iowa. The story of Michelle Boat and Tracy Mondabough serves as a stark reminder of the depths to which jealousy can drive a person, forever changing the lives of those caught in its path.